Hey, I just want to make a quick video of this iRobot Scooba, and hopefully I can add some new information that might not be available on YouTube. There are basically two models of these Scooba. One will have this wall following sensor and the other won't. And any other models just varies in color and battery life. There's also some models that have this metal latch, but the actual latching mechanism is not metal, it's still plastic. So if you're trying to buy one of these, don't let that be the deciding factor. So the Scooba has two water tanks. One is for clean water and one is for dirty water. Here I'm just filling up the tank with warm water. You can also add the iRobot cleaning solution for a better clean, but I wouldn't recommend using a generic floor cleaner since I had a robot where the tank developed cracks. So I placed the tank back on the robot and now you just push it down to snap it in place. Here's my cat, say hi. This is the room we're gonna clean. The room is about 150 square feet. And I ran the iLife ShineBot in this room a few times, but the floor still feels dirty, so hopefully the Scooba can make it nice and clean. You can use these virtual walls with the Scooba. They work by shining an infrared beam in the front, creating a barrier, so that the robot won't pass. The beam is not a straight, narrow line, it's actually a cone shape, so keep that in mind when you're placing it. The circle on top creates an infrared field, which prevents the robot from bumping into it. Okay, it's very important to clean the floor, like pick up any loose objects, because this thing gets stuck if there's any objects on the floor. So I don't see any like cat toys or anything. It's already pumping water out. The camera's about to die. So this will probably run for about 45 minutes or so. And I'm hoping with this one run, the floor would be pretty clean. So the iRobot Scooba is a random navigation robot, which means it doesn't know where it's going. So to clean the entire floor, it goes through a series of 3 patterns. The first pattern, it spins in a circle. The second pattern, it follows the edge of the wall. And the third pattern is it turns around when it bumps into things. Okay, so it died. To get the tank out, you just push on this. Don't use it to carry the robot because it might break. It says it on the manual too, not to use it as a carry handle. But if I open this over here, still a little bit of water, but it's not gonna get all the water out after I run normally. It was on the drying cycle, so it detected that it was out of water. So if I'm not sure if you can see that, but that's a lot of gray in there. So let me pour out the dirty water and show you how to clean this. Okay, we open this. As you can see, that water was pretty dirty. Keep in mind that I ran the iLife ShineBot a few times before this test. The instruction says to rinse both tanks with water, and I also like shaking the tank around to ensure it cleans nicely. It doesn't tell you in the manual, but I'm also cleaning these 2 ports here, because after I run it normally gets pretty dirty in there. Okay, and so we just leave these open, just leave it to dry basically. So to clean the robot, on the right there's this piece of rubber that just comes out, and then you rinse that. And then on the left, that's the vacuum filter. You take that out and you rinse that. To get the brush out, you just push the button and it just pops out. And then on the bottom of the robot, use a wet piece of cloth to clean the bottom because the robot is not waterproof. This comes out. So you want to clean that. And this little pin moves up and down too. See that? That just tells the robot if it's stuck or not. Don't use this as a handle either. It will break. Okay. Alright. So the floor, let me throw this away. The finished product, the floor, you can see from the glare there, it's pretty spotless. I feel it feels cleaner. Like you saw the water that came out. Yeah, that feels pretty clean. Yeah, I ran my iLife W400 here like 4 or 5 times and I couldn't get the floor this clean. So what I like doing for storage is always keep it on the charger, because if it's not, the battery will just die and then it will take a couple few runs where it will die like early because it needs to like recalibrate the battery. So always leave it plugged in. And the manual tells you to leave it plugged in too. And if you plug it in and the light, the charge light is flashing rapidly, just don't touch it. That's like a battery refresh. If you interrupt the charge, you can't get it back. And then it's just not gonna work right for a few runs. I found out the hard way. I was thinking about hot swapping these batteries, but after that happened, I was like, nope. Another thing is, what I like to do is I set the tank here for storage. If I know like the two tanks are dry, if I want to set it for long-term storage, I don't snap the tank in place because there's a constant pressure from the spring. This is a really stiff spring. Even though I chopped the spring in half to make it like softer, it's still really tough spring to press. So I wouldn't do that because if you leave it clamped in, like snapped in place, this little piece of plastic, this hook, will break over time. The previous seller glued it on and the plastic broke, so that was a pain to replace because I had to literally kind of like cut it off. And I just glued a new piece back on. And knowing that, and knowing not to clamp it down for long-term storage, I'm not worried about this breaking. So that, and the latch on the tank itself broke too. I had to replace that. So yeah, long-term storage, don't leave it clamped on. And also, importantly, don't use any like generic brand floor cleaner because that will damage the plastic. So something that I had to fix was the water pump, because the water pump had a crack in it, so I fixed that. And then this brush housing, I had to fix it too. I glued that piece there because this thing is really fragile, and any kind of like off-brand water floor cleaner would like damage it. Maybe you can see that. Some cracks on this end. It's really faint. And this thing comes apart too, but to clean it, I found it easier to just use like a brush you don't care about and just brush the hairs out. Instead of trying to cut it and pull it, just use a brush. And make sure you brush inside here too, because that's the squeegee, and it gets very nasty. So storage, yeah. I have a stand that comes with this. It's more of like a shop display stand, but it works pretty well for propping up the tank so it can dry. This I just leave on the floor charging all the time. So overall, I think that the Scooba cleans the floor very well, and I don't think you will find any other robot that can clean the floor this well in one run. And I've used other robots in the past, like the iLife ShineBot, and I ran that robot multiple times in this room and it couldn't clean the floor as well as this Scooba here. And I've also used the Scooba 230, and that also can't clean the floor that well either. So if you don't mind the maintenance of cleaning the robot afterwards, then I think it's worth picking one of these up to keep your floor clean.